Waves is directed by Trey Edward Schultz, a man who made It Comes at Night and Krisha, and is the latest film from A24. And this is the story of a boy named Tyler who is in high school and he's in the wrestling team and he's on the top of his game. He's got a great girlfriend played by Alexa Demi and he's doing really, really well. However, some stuff happens in his life that starts to slowly make things crumble, and he goes into this downward spiral, and things get worse and worse, and his family dynamics are challenged because of it. And that's all I'm going to tell you about the film because I want to keep it as vague as possible. The trailers actually kept it pretty vague too. It's surprisingly very subdued. The actual movie does go into a few more intense places, which is something that I'm not surprised about because that's something that the other films made by Trey Edward Schultz have done too. If you've seen It Comes at Night, then you know exactly the kind of directional style he's into. There are points where things can happen, stuff is seen that can be very abrasive. But overall, about this film is really great. It's a really emotional experience, and that's something that's come up in quite a few reviews of the film. It's definitely gonna pull at your heartstrings. There's gonna be some people who might get very teary-eyed over this movie, and I would not be surprised about that. It's definitely one of the most brilliant in terms of concepts. It's a really brilliant film and one of the best of 2019. One thing that is important to note though in this film is that it's actually being described as a musical by A24 and by the composers of the film, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. To an extent, I can see that. It is kind of like a musical, and you can make that argument. And there's definitely a lot of music that is a driving force of the movie. And that is to be praised because a lot of the audio and visuals of this film are what make this movie what it is. And so that is something that is pretty remarkable because they do tell the story. The overall plot line is very simple and it is very straightforward, but it is actually told because of the movements and because of the audio. I keep coming back to that. The sound editing in particular is very important in this movie because of that. And it's wonderfully executed. You pair that up with a bunch of really powerful performances from Kelvin Harrison Jr., who plays Tyler. Sterling K. Brown is one of the best performances I've ever seen from him. Honestly, best supporting actor worthy. Taylor Russell, however, might walk out with the best supporting actress Oscar nomination this year, and I wouldn't be surprised. Her performance is incredible. She has to carry a lot of this film, and there are a lot of times in this film where the story is told from her point of view. And it is magnificent. Her commitment to the role is really some surprising stuff, and it's brilliantly executed. Everybody else in the film is also really, really great. But like I said, this film really relies on a very tight writing hand and directional hand, and that's definitely here. I think they've done a wonderful job, Trey has, and I can't wait to see what else he does. It's just a really well-crafted film. The first half of this film is virtually flawless. It's actually probably the best movie of the year. The first half, that is. The first hour of this film is so well realized that honestly, if that was the whole film, this would be top tier movies of 2019. But the second half of this film does something very interesting. For about 30 minutes, the film sort of comes to a stop. And you have to sort of marinate in things that are happening, and it does crawl a little. And this has been brought up by a lot of people who have seen the movie as a point of criticism. A lot of people have not liked the movie because of that. I wouldn't say it's a bad second half. It's a really good second half. It's just as good. My one little issue with the second half is actually not to do with the pace at all. The pace is fine. I understand it's slowing down. It makes total sense. But one thing that did kind of throw me off was its tone. There is a bit of an abrasive tone change right around the beginning of the second half. That was a little strange, and it did last for a few minutes until it finally subsided later on, but it felt like a break in tension, and I understand the approach. I understand what Schultz is trying to do in this moment and how he's trying to approach this scene, and that's fine. And I totally understand that. It's just a very minor thing because there's this moment where you're just having to sit back and sort of take it all in, and then suddenly there's a ha-ha moment. And that's, again, like I said, a very, very minor little issue I have personally in an otherwise virtually perfect movie. That, I guess, and yes, it does sort of impact it though for about 20-25 minutes, and I thought that was a little strange. But after that, the film does come together very, very well, and it leads to a really emotionally fulfilling final act, which I really loved. The entire film is based on emotions. It's a very human film. I said this in my review of Marriage Story very recently, that it's a very realistic movie, to the point where you couldn't even tell if they were actually acting out a script. It was like Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson were actually playing these people. And I mentioned the scene where they have this argument saying this is such a realistic scene and it's so tense. It's one of the most tense scenes of the year and they're just talking. Very similarly in this film, there's no superheroes. There's no, science fiction elements or anything. These are very realistic stories about very realistic people. And the stuff that they're dealing with is also very similarly very real and has a major impact on their lives. And the film portrays that beautifully, and for that, it is definitely one of the biggest achievements of a film this year, just in that regard. If only those few little minutes in the middle, it's a 2 hour and 15-minute movie, if only those few little things in the middle, just a couple of things, had been a little more, I guess, had a better spacing out period, and we had some time to meander into that a little bit more easily instead of kind of out of nowhere. And I was noticing it from the point of view of my audience, because the audience was sort of reveling in something that happens in the first half, and then the second half is just ha, and you're like, okay, that is a little abrupt. That's it. Aside from that, Waves is a really terrific film, and you really should see it on a big screen. See it with a good sound system, especially. It's very important. I'm going to give Waves a 9.5 out of 10. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Look forward to more reviews very soon. In other ways, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.